Hello, Chris Howard is here, and welcome to the latest HR on the Offensive Live. Do you know what? I've done 5 or 6 of those, and that's the first time I stuttered on the intro. That's one of the downsides of when you go live. Thank you very much, all of you that are watching this video that we are putting out across our different YouTube and social media channels. We have a couple of fantastic lacers joining me in the Lace office, and then we've got one remote. Jess Herniman, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Good, happy to be here.
Yes, happy to be here. Happy to have you here as well. And I've got Adam Morris.
Hello.
And I've got Steph Abel. Hello.
Hey.
So today's live stream is an interesting one, and it's based on an article which we've been talking about internally. It was a Fortune 500 or Fortune.com article, and it was around, do you need a best friend at work? So I thought I'd get some lace friends along to talk about it. How about that, eh?
Touched.
Well, what a beautiful segue. So today's podcast live stream, it's do you need a best friend at work? Now, I don't know about you guys, and we were just talking just before we went live, but I feel like that's been on employee engagement surveys for about at least 10, 15 years, time immemorial. And I thought I'm going to get a few people on to talk about this, because what was interesting about this Fortune article, which we discussed, was it almost was trying to say that whole kind of dynamic is not relevant anymore. And so I wanted to get a couple of laces on just to talk about it, really, just for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And I'm looking at you, so I'm going to start with you, Adam. You're going to get picked off first. So excellent. Just general thoughts around that as a concept, like, do you think you need a best friend at work, or does it need to be redefined?
Yeah, so I it's an interesting question. So I think this article was based on a piece of research that was done by Gallup, I think, showing basically the benefits of having a best friend at work. But obviously, post-COVID, that's changing. People aren't spending as much time in the office. People aren't actually having those relationships kind of in person anymore. And potentially there is therefore the harmful element of not creating kind of friendships at work. And actually just does that, as you say, does that dynamic need to change? I think I can definitely see both sides of it. I think there is still something to say around having friendships at work and having relationships at work. I think the benefits of that, not just to organizations, but also to you as an individual are really, really clear. But I do also actually think that probably the nature of those relationships change, as the nature of all of our relationships throughout our entire lives have changed. And maybe, you know, we don't need to think of it as having a best friend at work, but potentially just another friend in which, you know, you don't always see all of your friends all the time. Actually, is that friendship and relationship at work probably falling into that same definition as well?
Yeah, I quite like that. And Steph, I'll get you to give your thoughts as well. But I thought when I read this article, I thought back to my own personal experiences in previous roles, and this idea of a best friend, someone that's with you forever, and all of that sort of stuff. And I have a couple of friends who I used to work with, and now I see them once a year. And it made me just think about that kind of, you know, put it on a survey, the importance of it. But Steph, get some thoughts from you, please.
I think it's important to have somebody at work who you can definitely confide in and have those moments where you just go, oh my God, like, oh, am I sane? Am I right? And I think you need that person that you can trust and have that relationship with. I do think there's a fine balance between getting confused between a professional relationship and a friendship, and how deep those connections go. Because, like, as you say, once you leave, it's quite, something quite magical happens, that all of a sudden everyone just disappears and you don't really maintain those. And I don't know whether it's because of that shared space and that time that you're spending together in work. It's almost like a relationship of convenience, because you're at work for like the majority of your day. So these are the people that you're around and that you're speaking to. And then once you move on, the dynamics change.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, where do you stand on the old best friend at work?
Yeah, so I think it's probably a bit of a personal preference as well. I think if I thought about it, and I think it kind of also depends where you are in your life. You know, if I think about, I've just moved, I'm a 22-year-old graduate, I've just moved to a new city. You want to go in, you want best friends at work, you're finding your feet, you know, it's all really exciting. You want to go out drinking if you drink, or, you know, social activities. So I think, yes, for those sorts of people, I think they would love to have friends at work, but I think there are also other people in their lives. They might not be able to have the time and space for best friends. You know, they also might not live that close to the office now. We're living in a remote world. So I think it is generally it's a personal preference. People might have, you know, big families, they don't have time. So I think it's definitely beneficial. I think going back to Steph's point regarding having someone to confide in, I know I found that really useful in the past, but also I don't think you need to, and I think it kind of depends where you are in your life about whether you want a best friend or a big group of friends at work.
Interesting. And just to add another friend into the mix, we've got Gemma Ryle who's joined us. Jem, you all right?
Yeah, good, thanks. I also have a view on this. In terms of when I found some of my best work buddies, it's been at points of crisis or really key projects where we've been working really long hours, and they tell me brutally, you know, if I've got mascara halfway down my face, if it's 10 o'clock at night, or feed me pizza and if I need to. So those relationships tend to form at points of really intense work as well, where you start sharing and living life a bit fuller together. And those are the relationships that I have maintained over nearly 2 decades. So, yeah.
Interesting. So let's talk about some of the specifics, because some of the article talks a little bit around the impact of culture, impact of engagement, impact of collaboration. So I'll start with you, Steph, and then I'll go to Adam for a bit of a free swim. So are there any particular bits from that article, or even, you know, what I just mentioned, so culture or engagement or collaboration, you think have that necessary impact on, or is it important to have a best friend at work or not?
Yeah, I definitely feel as if, and I guess it goes back to that confidant or that critical friend who can just be honest with you. So if you're playing back some scenarios or a piece of work or asking for feedback on something, you want somebody to be honest with you. And sometimes having that person, your go-to person, is really good. But I guess there's a flip side to it as well, where I've seen sometimes that there's friendships in the workplace that could therefore become, I'm going to say, like toxic and have a negative impact on the team as well. So I do think there's quite a fine balance, and you've got to know where that line is and how to still be professional. So there can be an impact, I think, there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, and I think I'd go wider to say, actually, I think you mentioned at the start, Chris, around those engagement surveys. So this would be a question I'm sure everybody on this call and probably everybody watching has an opinion on those types of engagement surveys, because what they end up doing is they end up conflating the effect, having good friendships at work, having reliable friendships at work, having best friends at work, with the causes, which actually are having an open culture, a culture where, if you think, we've mentioned the points of this already. If you think about your best friends, these are people who you can have difficult conversations with. These are people that you can come to in times of need, as Gemma said, in times of crisis. And actually, if you build a culture like that as an organisation, actually, it doesn't really matter if the individuals within that organisation are the best of friends, or actually if they are just work colleagues. Actually, you will still be able to see some of the benefits that come out of that as well. So I think there is a cultural element to it. I think there's a structural element to it. And if organisations want to promote this, probably rather than buying in pizza and having ping pong tournaments, actually the best thing you can do is allow space for people to be vulnerable and have those challenging conversations.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. Jess, you and I have done a couple of pieces around culture. We've done a podcast, I think, and also we've done a live stream previously. So I want to bring you in on that, Adam's point. That's all right. So
I think friendships do help culture a lot, actually. If I think about you know, trust, jokes is a massive one. Being able to have a safe space where you can laugh with people, you know, it just creates like such an amazing, especially when you're all working in an office, you know, if you all do get on, you all spend a lot of time together, it does create a really nice place to be, because you genuinely enjoy going to work because they are your friends, as opposed to people, you know, going into work and you're like, I don't really know what to say to my colleagues. I think everyone feels more relaxed if you're around your friends. But I think that's like the perfect scenario. And actually we live in, you know, organizations are so big, not everyone's going to be your friend in the organization. So that's not really something to strive to. But I do think it's good if you do have people that you can have a joke with. It does make going into work easier if you can just call someone up if you had a bad day because you trust them in crisis. That does make work easier. So I do think it does, but I also think on the flip side, if things aren't going well in your organization, it can really spiral. I think the negativity can spiral because people moan, and then unfortunately that moaning, or that, not anger, but whatever it is, resentment, can quite often lead to a bit of a domino effect throughout your culture, I think. So I think, yes, definitely, because it's great to have friends, but like that, it's a really hard tipping point. You need to make sure that doesn't kind of go and create that domino effect of negativity, like I just said.
Yeah, and Gemma, what's interesting is the article, again, just a reference for those people tuning in, the article was a Fortune 5, it's Fortune, I keep calling it Fortune 5, it's Fortune.com article. And in it talked about this kind of us versus them sort of culture that could be quite dangerous. I don't know if you can just reflect on that a little bit.
Absolutely. When Steph and Chris were talking earlier, Steph and Adam, talking about having friends and how it can potentially have a negative impact. If you've got friends where you've got a manager who's friends with someone in their team, often that can create that uncomfortable element where there is that sort of knock-on impact of it not going so well. And to Jess's point, the importance of having trust, transparency as part of the culture of the business is what can often overcome that tension. And that feeling of unfairness, because your friends, of course, you're going to go out and do this. You're going to share information earlier with them than you are with the rest of the team. Actually, some of those behaviours that we can set as part of the culture of the business can help offset that.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, I want to talk a little bit about collaboration, because I think that's one of the key parts that's important to note as well. I quite like this idea of, it's not, as we've talked about, it's not so much the best friend at work, but it's like people that you can connect and collaborate with. So can I just get some thoughts from you in that vein? Because again, it's not about, I have to have this best friend who I can, it's not always that. It can be, if I've got a group of people that I can collaborate with, that's better from a productivity perspective, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And we talk about this when we do design, and our design thinking kind of methodology as we go through that, is actually allowing spaces for, again, people to be vulnerable and people to be honest about what the problems are and actually what we think the solutions to those problems are as well. And I think that's really at the heart of what we would deem effective collaboration. And I think that if we go back to kind of the thrust of the original piece from Fortune, I think it was around the changing nature of friendship and the changing nature of the best friend. But actually, I think there is an element of that, which is the changing nature of collaboration and the way that we work with one another and the way that we get work done, I think is interesting as well. I don't necessarily think that you have to have best friends in order to do that, but I do think you have to have that conducive environment in order for people to be honest with one another. And if we call it best friends, then I'm happy to do that.
Love it. Steph, any thoughts?
I just think, yes, the collaboration piece I think has changed when, especially thinking about now, a lot of places are hybrid like working, but I'm just reflecting, and I want to call out Gemma right here, because Gemma and I were recently on a project together. I was fairly new to Lace, and actually we built a great relationship that was not in the office, and that was by using like Teams, like chats and things like that. And there was like times where I think we just got on and it was like, oh, this has happened, and we had that relationship where we could confide in each other and share stuff from our personal lives. And again, it goes back to the fact that you've got so much shared time together and you're working on something and shared experiences. We're all in here because we have as well shared interests around HR and helping our clients. So we do have a lot of like common interests, which I think is an easy springboard to come off to make those connections in the workplace.
Yeah, and Gemma, I'll bring you in on this, seeing as you referenced there. Any thoughts from your side? Then we'll go to Jess.
In terms of collaboration and how I think absolutely. And Steph and I did work on a project and we didn't see each other in person very often. And tools and technologies like Teams did really help. But that shared commonality of both personal and work experiences really helped to build that. Again, we were in a project where lots of things were changing. So sometimes having that shared moment of can we just recap? Can we do these things? And having the honest conversations, transparent, very open. Steph, I'm going to bring you under with me. We're both a bit of oversharers as well. So, those sorts of things could help speed it up. Absolutely, yes.
Cool. Jess?
I think trust is what I'm kind of hearing from everyone. I personally feel like I can collaborate more if I trust the people that I work with and that I'm working with. And if you are friends with them, you do just trust them more. So I do think, going back to the point, will friendships increase collaboration? Yes, because I think you have trust, and you have trust in yourself, and you feel more free to collaborate and to actually show your true self and to contribute your true ideas. You're not going to push it down because you trust these people, you like these people, you're friends with these people, and you all respect each other quite a lot. So yes, I do think it definitely does. And like Gemma and Steph said, that doesn't necessarily have to be in person. I agree with that. That can also happen online over Teams or whatever medium you use.
Brilliant. And we're almost towards the end of the pod. It's not pod. I keep saying pod. It's a live stream. Yes, it's kind of the same thing. But Adam, any kind of final thoughts around any bits that maybe we haven't covered today?
I'm just have a think. I don't think so. I think for my conclusion was probably very similar to Jess's there. That we can talk about friendship at work. And trying to find that and try and kind of categorize it. But actually the key thing is actually enabling trust within your organizations. I think as long as you're doing that, the change, that nature of that, as the workplace changes, will develop as well. But hopefully the benefits that it brings won't change.
Absolutely. Steph?
I agree with that. I think that having those relationships in work does help, but I would take a balanced approach to thinking, are they like best friends or a professional relationship? It's back to the trust and teamwork as well, of how you're working together. If you're lucky, I think if you can leave a workplace, go elsewhere and still be in touch with those people and still meet them, I think that's when they're an actual friend rather than it being a work relationship.
Lovely. Gemma, just any final thoughts from you just before we wrap up today?
The openness to friendship at work. I think some people bring their whole selves to work and some prefer not to. And so just recognizing when you have those people that do want to bring their whole selves to work, that might make friendships easier. But to be open to all sorts of friendships, whether it's in person, virtual, and both with your direct team and that broader team, because you never know who you're going to work with in the future. Yeah,
Jess, any kind of the final word?
Oh no! Now you put pressure on me to say something good, Chris. I don't think I've got good. No, I'm joking. I think probably just it's like the point I made at the start. It's preference on whether you want to make best friends or friends at work. I think good relationships with people you trust is more important than necessarily having friends that have to be your friends outside of work, or you have to have anything in common with them. I think the most important thing is people that you can trust, people that you can collaborate with, and that you do genuinely like to a certain extent, but they don't necessarily need to be your friends. But that creates a great culture and helps with collaboration.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this quick whistle-stop tour on that overarching, do you need a best friend at work? Interesting discussion, interesting debate. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining me. Steph, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gemma, remotely, thank you very much. And finally, Jess, remotely. Hopefully you've enjoyed this session. It is available via all of the mediums that we run these sessions on. So YouTube, Twitter, we're also on LinkedIn as well. But thank you very much as always, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.